Hey, friends, welcome to the inaugural podcast of Which Way is Up? Which Way is Up is a focus that we're going to do here at Treach for the month of May, in which we own and, yes, even publicly talk about the stuff that we all carry around in our life. You can call it mental wellness, mental illness, you can call it anything you want, but what we're going to do is tell the truth, that we all have stuff. And it is divided up into a couple of weeks. Today, we are going to talk about depression. In the coming weeks, we're going to talk about worry, stress, and anxiety. I don't know who has that. Do you know anybody with that? We're going to talk about burnout. We're going to talk about isolation and loneliness and how it all comes together to make us who we are. And that even in the midst of all that, man, we are great people. We are made perfectly in the eyes of God, and all of that stuff can coexist. So there you go. I'll say more at the very end. But today, we're going to get started with what I hope are brand new friends in my life. And I'm going to say a little bit about them. There will be a longer bio in which Alyssa shares some of the deep, dark secrets of their life, even stuff we might make up. One of my new friends is Shawn. Shawn is 27, lives here in Dallas, is at barber school, is sporting just the coolest dude.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to talk about art, because art for me is also a release.
Yeah.
I find that very therapeutic. And I don't know what I'm doing, but I love to smear paint on canvases.
Most of the time, neither do I, so it's fine.
There you go. Yeah. Jennifer is with us. I'm going to probably call her Jen most of the time, but she is almost she's at this fine line between leaving the world of practicing law for 20-something years and crossing over this river into ministry, is graduating from Perkins School of Theology, finishing up her internship. She's jumped through all these great big hoops that the United Methodist Church puts up in front of her, walking over fire, you name it. She's had to do it with the support of her son and Puppy Dog Scout, and we are just, thank you for your gift of time. Justin, our new friend, is also with us. And Justin has just the coolest beard, plus a collection of life stories and experiences in ministry with underserved populations in Kentucky and here in Dallas. He and his wife direct Diapers, Etc., the largest diaper distributor through those in need. I was going to say nonprofits, but it's beyond that. It's actually to heinies.
Yeah.
People who need diapers.
Direct service.
Direct service. There you go. He also is a really smart guy. He's working on his PhD, and I'm trying really hard to not let that intimidate me, because I don't usually use big words. But we all have a story. We all have a story about depression, and we're going to share those, and hopefully we will unlock some doors that will help you hear and identify what might be a part of your story. So with that said, Justin, give us a little framework. So maybe how old were you when you said depression for the first time? Or when did you realize, this isn't just a sucky day or a bad day?
Yeah, so for most of my childhood, I dealt with depression. I didn't recognize it as such until I was 13. At 13, I was hospitalized for suicidal ideation and spent a couple weeks on a psych ward there, doing intensive therapy, finally got on meds, and spent most of my teen years on meds and was pretty stable. And then I made the poor choice to start doing a PhD. And for anybody who doesn't know, that can be quite triggering if you already have mental illness especially. And so about 3.5 years ago, I fell into a really, really deep spiral that I thankfully, because of what had happened to me when I was 13, I recognized that immediately and immediately sought help and was able to start getting therapy and all of that. But it's been a rough 3 years after many years of more or less being stable with the medications that I was on. But yeah, 13 was when it hit me, when you have to go to the hospital and spend a couple weeks there, because you feel like killing yourself, then that kind of opens your eyes that you've got some stuff to deal with, and I've been dealing with it since, and some unhealthy ways that we'll probably talk about, and then in more recent years, thankfully, I've been have had access, which is a huge issue around mental health. It needs to be noted. I've had the fortunate experience to have access to good care.
Oh yeah, it makes a world of difference.
And so I haven't had to turn to self-medicating and stuff that other folks who don't have access to good mental health care often do in alcohol or illicit drugs or whatever else. And I've been able to continue to get good treatment. So
good. Shawn, Jennifer, did y'all, I'm just curious because I think that our entry into a diagnosis usually came after we had a moment, right? When did y'all have that awakening, or did somebody else have it for you? Was it a traumatic event, or somebody said, "Gosh, you're always in a fun." I mean, what started that, Jennifer, for you?
For me, I was a young lawyer, and so I was in my 20s. I had graduated from law school, and I was in my first full-time job, which was practicing law. That should never be anyone's first full-time job, but that's really neither here. That's a different podcast.
Neither should being a pastor.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so I was practicing law, and I needed to go to a conference in Philadelphia and refused to get on the airplane because I was so terrified of flying. And I had had a crippling fear of flying that just got worse and worse, which for normal people, that keeps you from going on vacation. As a litigator, that keeps you from practicing law. And so that was a problem, and it was clearly the plane's fault. I mean, there was nothing wrong with me, obviously, right? Obviously. And so I went and saw a counselor, and the counselor sent me to a psychiatrist, which was terrifying to me. And because not only had I never been to a psychiatrist, I didn't really fully know what they did, and I didn't know anyone who had been to one before. But I went and saw him, and he pretty clearly realized that it probably wasn't an airline problem, that it might have had something going on with me. And so in the first session, while we were talking, he asked very pointed questions that now are very funny to me because I realize how clear it was, that there was a lot of depression and anxiety, which are two sides of the same coin that I had going on and had for my whole life growing up, and just never knew what it was when I was a kid. I just had no idea. I didn't have a framework for understanding that. And so, but he knew. And so he started asking very pointed questions and was asking me about, my functioning every day, my executive functioning. Do I get out of bed? Am I tired all the time? Am I able to get things done? Do I have enjoyment in life? And then started asking other interesting questions, like, do you count things? I was like, what are you talking? Yes, I mean, we all count things? He was like, how many ceiling tiles are in this room? I was like, well, 16, but there's 4 here. And if you count that, he was like, count thing, writing down what I was saying, and diagnosed me with OCD and with depression and anxiety, all of which I think are of a piece. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was then that I started unpacking that maybe the crying jags I was happening weren't exactly healthy and were not things that other people were experiencing, that maybe all of my challenges in getting work done every day and my challenges in relationships and things like that, that perhaps all of those were related, and I just hadn't seen that before. Yeah. So that was really the first time that I started to put it together.
That's a great word for it, when we start kind of piecing it together. Shawn, how old were you when, I know you said that this has been an identified struggle journey for the last couple of years. Do you have remembrances as a child growing up when the pieces didn't all just fit together?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely growing up as a closeted kid in a conservative country town in Texas definitely didn't help. And that's probably the root of a lot of my issues. Not that my family was never accepting, because they totally were, but, no one wants their kid to be gay. So, this is always like that. But I didn't even start realizing it until probably about 2 or 3 years ago. I lost my dog, my grandfather, and then I had a really bad breakup. And kind of all those things kind of just pushed together, and I wasn't able to do work. Didn't want to get out of bed. And then everything started happening. I finally started getting help, got on medication. Medication didn't quite help me the way I would liked it to. So I kind of got off of it and kind of started this weird own journey of myself. But it's definitely been been something.
Yeah.
But I'm still like identifying certain things about myself and like my diagnosis. Yeah.
Well, and welcome to the journey.
Yeah, thanks.
You're
Glad to be here.
you're in good company.
Yeah.
And you will be on this journey the rest of your life.
Yes.
And I say that because I'm curious. When I started, I was very reluctant to name it. Then once I named it, I was reluctant to take medication. And I used the thought of the medication kind of like antibiotics. Mm-hmm. Like I will take a course of this and I will feel better, and then I won't need this anymore. Mm-hmm. Did any of y'all do that? Did any of you kind of go in or out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about it.
Well, I kind of been on and off medication for years, and what they've determined is I have what they call treatment-resistant depression, meaning that many meds don't affect me the way that they should. And so I've recently started another treatment called transmagnetic cranial stimulation.
Oh, yeah.
Where they put magnets on your head and it helps reinvigorate neural pathways that release serotonin and norepinephrine and other chemicals in your brain that help make you happy. But yeah, it's been just kind of up and down through all of this and trying. I haven't tried anything illegal, but I've definitely tried a variety of other substances, thankfully in consultation with my psychiatrist. But yeah, landing on something, it still hasn't found that right fit to really kind of lift me up to where I might feel what somebody would say is normal.
Right.
You know, whatever normal is. Like just remembering there were times in my life when I was happy. And now I'm like, most of the time, which is better than laying in my bed curled up in a ball crying. But, you know, I go to my kid's soccer game and I should be really enjoying that, watching my kids having fun. And I'm just kind of sitting there mostly thinking, you know, being anxious about what we're going to cook for dinner or just even little stuff that doesn't matter that much, but it takes my focus off being in the moment and enjoying what's happening right then and there.
Do you ever find yourselves thinking about like, and I love that story about like I think I've had to totally redefine what happy is. Like I don't know what happy is really for anybody else. Mm-hmm. Like I think maybe sometimes I make up happy based on movies. Mm-hmm. Or, oh, okay, that's happy. I'm supposed to be singing and dancing and doing a musical number right now as I skip to work or whatever.
You're not supposed to do that?
Well,
you can.
Weekends. That's what the weekend is for. The big musical number, Saturday.
Gotcha.
So, what's kind of your, like, have y'all developed any kind of self-check? Like, okay, right now I'm feeling whatever, fill in the blank, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, what's your awareness meter? Have y'all begun to kind of play with that some?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's one of the things I've always tried to pride myself in is my self-awareness. I never want to offend anyone. I always want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And definitely I feel like there's a stigma that comes with depression and anxiety. And that's one thing that really kept me from, I don't want to say self-diagnosing, but like looking at myself and seeing what was wrong with me. Because, I mean, going to high school, you know, depression and anxiety get bullied. I was already bullied for many other things. I didn't want to like focus on anything else. I didn't want to bring any more attention to myself. And then going up into the, you know, my adult life, I see people at work, people I'm in school with, my family, my friends, all struggling with it. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I so afraid to let go, ask for help, and just see what happens?
Shawn, you said something that I think I would really like us to do. Maybe I'll take a moment and reflect on the phrase stigma, shame, and what's wrong with me. Did you feel, as you began to identify, or others did, somehow less than? That I just think the phrase "something's wrong with me" is an invitation to lower my status in just my understanding of the universe. I'm broken. I'm less than. We were talking earlier about shame and how there is an invitation, whether it's from inside us or the universe, to accompany that less than with shame. Anybody want to share a story of that and maybe how you've pushed through that, or even today, carry a little piece of that in your back pocket?
Coming from a different background and as a almost former lawyer, one of the most helpful things for me was at first when I started dealing with it as a young lawyer, I just knew that I was so overwhelmed by myself, by so much of what was going on with me that I didn't fully understand, that I just wasn't happy and didn't understand what was happening, that I didn't really feel shame as much as confusion as to, why am I having these crying jags? Why can't I sleep normally? Like all these unanswered questions. And so once I actually got a diagnosis, it was freeing for me because I was able to actually name it. And it was something that I could actually deal with. So that was very helpful. And honestly, I was terrified to go to a psychiatrist because I was afraid that I was going to be involuntarily committed, that he was going to say, you're crazy, you need to be committed. And now I realize that if being worried that you're crazy is probably the best evidence that you're actually not. Because if you were, you wouldn't, you literally would never think that. That would not be the thought process going through your head. So I'm glad that I pushed past those fears and saw him. And then and he was very approachable and just a great person. So that was very helpful. But also I ended up, strangely enough, in conversations with other lawyers, and we had very frank conversations with each other, with other experienced lawyers who also had anxiety and depression and were taking medication for it and were seeing regular therapists because they had either tried to self-medicate or had not tried to self-medicate and had nearly exploded their careers, had nearly destroyed their relationships in very spectacular ways through affairs, through overspending, through all sorts of things, through sex addiction, there's all kinds of ways that all these things, if untreated, can manifest in very unhealthy ways in people's lives. And so they brought themselves back from the brink of that, went to regular therapy, took medication, and are much healthier as a result, have a much better quality of life, and are able to have very demanding jobs. Being a pastor is demanding, but being a litigator for a national client where you're flying around the country trying cases all day, that's no joke. I was doing that for a while. It's great, but it's very demanding. And being able to do that while managing anxiety and depression is interesting. And so talking to my friends very frankly about that and very openly, people who you would never suspect, if you just met them, you'd never in 10 million years suspect that they tried to commit suicide. I had law partners of mine who tried to commit suicide in their offices. This is a really serious issue. And so it led to a lot of very frank, open discussions. And I personally think that that's the biggest antidote to shame is vulnerability and openness and honesty, and let's talk about it and let's name it and be honest with that. And some of my closest friends are people who have done that with me and brought me into that conversation and have listened to me when I had things to say about the same topic.
Definitely there was the shame aspect when I was in high school, and my experience was different. I was an athlete. I won't say I was popular, but I was enough with the in crowd and whatever. But I don't think I ever let anyone know that I was going to counseling and that I was taking meds and that all of that kind of stuff. And I also had some OCD tendencies. I remember I would sit on the bench sometimes when I was playing basketball. And there was this prayer I just felt I had to pray over and over again. Or I felt like somebody, something bad was going to happen to somebody I loved. But when I went through this most recent big episode, I decided from day one of that this was not going to be shameful, that I was going to be open about it. And other folks, one of the pastors here, Nick, has seen my Facebook thread. I talk about this constantly. And I just decided this is not significantly different than having cancer or heart disease or whatever other thing it might be, except that the human brain's way more complicated. And so there's a lot of confusion around it. But I decided I'm just going to, every step of my journey, good and bad, I'm going to document so that other people who feel shame can see that I'm refusing that now. And I haven't felt shame really in the last 3 years in the way that I had prior, partly because, like I said, I just made that decision up front that I was going to be as honest as I could about this.
I couldn't agree more. I think we're all amen in that. You know, I think no occupation or vocation is immune. Mm-hmm. And if we could all be a part of you know, I kind of have this visual of building a bridge built on honesty. You know, over all the crap, we get over to the new land, and it's like, oh my God, it is so cool over here. I wish everybody would come across the honesty bridge. You know, Shawn, I'm kind of imagining, and a lot of this is stereotypical, you're going to be a barber. Is that the correct title?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, like, maybe you can facilitate honest conversations while you're cutting people's hair.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Have you imagined some of that looking forward?
Oh yeah, that's honestly one of the things that I'm like most excited about being a barber. I love people, which is why this coronavirus has sucked for me. But I mean, I feed off people. I feed off their energies. I love meeting new people. It's just what I do. And so being able to like meet someone new every single day, get to know their story, get to know them, I'm almost an unlicensed therapist, as like my instructors say. Yes. I mean, people literally come to their barbers or their hairstylists just to talk and vent. And sometimes the barbers and stylists don't even have to say a thing. They just people just want to vent. So I really am looking forward to that, because as much as I like to give advice, I mean, I like to give advice. I don't ever take my own advice, but I'm really good at giving it. So it's great.
Yeah, no, that could be like part of your, you know, Shawn, come out looking good, feeling good.
Yeah,
you know.
Exactly. Look good, feel good.
There you go.
I think it's a commendable career that pastors really could learn a lot from. Barbers and bartenders, I think, are the two professions that pastors need to study to see how do we listen well to.
Well, that's it right there, because we don't. Few of us shut up. I mean, we listen to respond, not listen to digest, right? Yeah. So let's take a little turn on this, and I'm curious, what does a good day look like now? You know, I think we've all been through the trenches, and what does a day look like that? You know, I call it an 80% day. Like, yeah, this is good. This is pretty good. How can you verbalize yours into a way that gives somebody who's having like a 20% day some hope? Do you know it the minute you wake up, or does it kind of come after 2 cups of coffee? Or
mine's probably about midday. Yeah, I'm too groggy in the morning.
Yeah,
I'm too focused on getting ready, getting to school. But usually midday, as soon as lunch hits, is usually when I can tell, like, okay, it's going to be a successful day, or it's been successful so far. Let's keep this up. I've noticed I've been in a good mood all morning. Let's make sure I do everything I can to keep that good mood going, and don't let anything kind of mess with me in any way.
Have any of y'all learned like kind of a self-awareness that when it's not going well, like a best practice, like, okay, this is on the bubble. I need to do this. Is there a best practice you've employed?
My therapist, I go to therapy once a week, and one of the best things that happened to me was when my therapist actually moved to North Carolina. I was really upset, but he was like, well, we could go virtual. And then the pandemic hit, and then I was glad that he moved to North Carolina. That worked out really well for me. So we meet over, you know, sort of a Zoom type interface once a week. And what he told me was, you know, he recommended if you're really struggling one day, whether it's either anxiety or depression or whatever it is, that he said, since you're at home, walk outside, get up if you can, as soon as you can. I mean, don't hang up on people if you're in the middle of a call, but, you know, finish the call, hang up, and get up and walk outside and go outside and get some exercise for as long as you reasonably can, especially living in Dallas. We're really fortunate with a really temperate climate most of the year. We have really good weather with abundant sunshine. And so I really do that. And I find on the days when I least want to go outside, that's when I most need to do it. And I need to just kind of kick myself in the pants and say, all right, it's time to go do this. And just walking around and, popping in my AirPods and going outside, even if it's only 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be a large commitment, but after about 10 or 15, I can already start to feel it kicking in, and I already start to feel a lot better.
Isn't it funny, that thing we most least want to do is sometimes a signal of the thing we most need to do?
Yep.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, I do the same thing because doing what I do, I spend most of my day at a computer right now. Thankfully, I'm done with writing. I defend. By the time this comes out, hopefully I will have successfully defended, but that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years, is just sitting, reading, and writing. And when I feel those moments coming on that are intense, I put some shoes on and I just go for a little walk around the block and look at the trees and I have like a lot of folks with anxiety and depression, we tend to either live in the past or we tend to live in the future or look, and so that helps a little bit when I can center on that moment, just recognizing the leaves moving, listening to birds, the sound of my feet walking, just whatever it is to be right in that moment. And then otherwise, for me, a big thing is I have found, and this is just what's been necessary for me, is I kind of live from medication dose to medication dose. So I take Adderall because I've also been diagnosed with ADD recently, gabapentin and Xanax kind of throughout the day, and I know when my scheduled times are, and so sometimes I'm like an hour away from that, and I'm like, okay, I can make it for another hour until I get that. And that's the ultimate goal, is not to live like that, but I know that's what I need to do for now, and it's getting me through while I'm finding other avenues of help, and I'm okay with that. And like you said, it's mostly 80%. I'm not, living on a high or as happy as I've been at other times in my life. But when it moves from being intolerable to tolerable, to me feels like a massive shift. It's still annoying. It's still frustrating, but knowing that I have the right things in place to be able to go from being in a really bad place to being in an okay place really has made a big difference for me.
I make up that it helps us all not feed our anxiety monster. Like when we have that moment, for me, when I began to learn, I have the tools I need either inside me or within reach, phone, computer, or whatever. And so it was a matter of, do what you've been trained to do. You're having a bad day. Don't go eat a gallon of Bluebell. Go
but
for
a half
walk.
a gallon, maybe
a quart.
I'm just saying,
You
like,
know,
it's a
I'm on the
sliding
quart.
scale.
Sometimes.
I'll eat my pint of ice cream while I take my walk. Does that work?
You know what? That's
Calories in,
Good. I
calories
like
out.
that.
I love the way you
Multitasking.
think. I used to use it, and we have all self-medicated in different ways, right? Mm-hmm. And mine was definitely, food was my altered state. Whose fault that was growing up, who knows? But, if you feel bad, eat. If you feel happy, eat. If it's raining, eat.
Yeah.
If you made a good grade, eat. If you made a bad grade, eat. Right? So I'm curious now, is there any kind of, here we are in a church, spiritual practice that helps you breathe better, think clearer, get in touch with, a higher power that is help?
It's been helpful to me when I actually took interfaith studies at Perkins. We were required to go to the Maria Cannon Zen Center at
my home
White
church.
Rock. Yes, at White Rock United Methodist Church, which is in my neighborhood. And so we went there and did a Zen meditation session, which I had always associated Zen practices with Buddhism, which is fine. I just don't happen to be Buddhist. And so, but Dr. Abito, who taught our class, sort of, introduced to us the idea that you don't have to be Buddhist to participate in those types of contemplative activities, and that you can actually see that as a contemplative prayer practice, which made more sense to me. I grew up Roman Catholic, so contemplative prayer does intuitively make some sense to me. So I have found, especially as a big Enneagram 3, that it's helpful for me to stop, to not have a to-do list, to not have all my stuff to do, and to start my day with simple prayers to God and in quiet, and to just sort of power down. Sometimes I use the Calm app on my phone for a guided meditation, but if I can spend 10, 15 minutes in the morning with God in silence, just being quiet, that is very helpful and centering for me. It helps with depression and anxiety, and it also helps me to experience God in a different way that's different from the way I experience God in worship or in more active prayer.
Yeah. I think the braver any of us can become in realizing that God doesn't just live with that church address. And actually, I think we do a disservice to God when we lock God in the church.
I agree.
That's another podcast for another day. So this has been more fun, and I could just spend the rest of the day with us talking. But I do wonder, like, if you had one last little nugget to say to somebody who is going to watch this and go, oh, man, I wish I had learned this 10 years ago. What's the next right thing for somebody today who is saying, they're speaking my language, they're speaking to me, I've been in his shoes or her shoes? What would you do? What little would you give?
For me, it's just like let go. Just like it's okay to need help, to just want some help. For me, a person who I don't care what people think about me, about the way I look. I wear makeup, I wear wigs, like I wear heels. Obviously don't care what people think. Why is this one extra thing? What does this matter? What makes me being gay different than me having depression anxiety? What makes me having purple in hair different from having depression anxiety? So for me, it was just letting go and just realizing, maybe it was a mental trick I had to do to myself that I didn't know I was doing, maybe when I was sleeping or something. But like, it was just one day I just had to wake up and be like, why the F do I care what people think? Like just get help. Why hurt myself in the long run or the people around me? Because it's going to hurt them worse in the end, honestly, I feel. So
yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
That's a self-care moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer, what would you
I would say if someone is listening to this and is or watching and is thinking about this, but has not, is concerned about whether or not they might be depressed or anxious or something like that, particularly if they're scared about addressing that, having been on the other side and being in a much, much healthier place than I used to be, I can definitely say that it's much scarier not to seek treatment than it is to seek treatment. And that once you actually start talking to a mental health professional, it's the easiest, most comforting thing in the world. It really is. Yeah. And you're not required to stay. If it doesn't work, do something else, you're not making a lifelong commitment. You're trying something new. And if that is not comfortable to you, if you're listening to this, it's probably because you go to Treach and you have pastors here and you could talk to them confidentially and say, I'm concerned about this. What do you think? And talk to them and see what they have to say. That's also low commitment and not scary. You talk to them anyway. Why not talk to them? And I think that those are good entry points for entering into that discussion if that's something that interests you.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of kind of the mindset that you're modeling there is just addiction recovery, 12-step, just first step. First step is not, you're not eating the whole elephant, right? You're just getting your, knife and fork ready. Let's just sit down and say, hey, this is going on. It's amazing to me how, now that I'm on the other side of the bridge, how that is paralyzing to people, though. And maybe we can give you some courage. Any of us would have it, who have it, would say, here, have some of my courage, right? Today, I have plenty now, and I'll share it with you. Justin, what would you say? What's your last bit of go do this today?
Advocate for yourself, because it can be a struggle as you're trying to figure out different medications and treatments. And there's a lot of options. And like I said, the human brain is something that is still baffling to medical professionals. And so, you might try one treatment or one therapist and it doesn't work. And you need to advocate, okay, this isn't working. What else can we try? And then if you're in a position to have someone else in your life who can also be an advocate in those moments where it's difficult to advocate for yourself, try to bring at least one person in who can regularly also be an advocate for you at the times when you're struggling to do that. And so for me, I've been thankful. I've had a couple of my professors and my wife have really stepped in. And when I haven't been able to say, I need to try something new, this isn't working, they've noticed that in me, and they've either pushed me to do that or on my behalf, they've gone and sought out other treatments for me and stuff. So I think advocating for yourself is just huge, because it's easy in our very broken healthcare system to kind of be bounced around, and some, just like in any profession, some mental health care professionals aren't good at their job. and that's the reality. So you might step in and your first therapist or psychiatrist isn't helpful to you at all. I had an experience like that. And so I politely told that person, I don't think you're going to be helpful for me. I need to see somebody else. And I ended up with somebody else now who's fantastic and who's helped me a great deal. So, yeah, advocate for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we go into this land of unknown. So we're kind of operating without all the knowledge we need. So once you start gathering knowledge, like I remember when I first started looking for a therapist, I was just overwhelmed. Kind of like I looked at it like buying a car. Like, I don't even know. I just want a car with a good stereo. How do I even pick a good therapist? And to know that you could have an interview with a therapist and see if there's a good connection. Mm-hmm. You can also fire your therapist. Mm-hmm. You can also say, hey, you know what we're doing isn't working. I think I always felt so less than that I had just given all my power away. And just because you are on a depression journey doesn't mean you have to give any of that away, yep. Right? Well, guys, this has been just life-giving, and I hope you have found it life-giving as well. Yeah. Folks who are watching this, I'm going to make a promise on all these folks' behalf that they'll follow up with you.
Absolutely.
If there is somebody here that story chimes with your story, call me or Alyssa. I don't know that we're going to put your email address just like on the whole World Wide Web, but maybe we are. I don't know.
That's fine with me.
Alyssa
Practically
will help
already
us
is.
figure that out. Maybe on their bio or something, because that same truth is that all of us don't have the same story you have. Mm-hmm. And aren't we glad? How boring a world would it be if everybody was like me? No, I mean, it's just some of us have to have purple hair.
Some of us have to have no hair.
Or no hair.
Really. Some of us have all of it on our chin,
That's right. Did you? Yeah, anyway. Yeah, I noticed you're covering your head. Do you have hair on your head?
Yeah, I just don't shower as much as I should.
Oh, okay. Well, that's another podcast.
That's also part of depression sometimes, for what it's worth.
Self-care comes in all sorts of ways, yes. My brother. All right, so wrap up. Which way is up is a reality that we asked that question, but here's some exciting news. Many of us have begun to experience ways to find which way is up. And if up is hope, then let's grab a hold of it, right? Sometimes I look up going, what the hell? Mm-hmm. But hope can also be an image for forward thinking and excited thinking and opportunity. And if today has been for you an opportunity to go, take the next step, great. Throughout the month of May, every Sunday there's going to be a worship emphasis. Then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday there are going to be podcasts, deep dive interviews with you guys and others. There's going to be actual sensory experiences of how you might help yourself. There's going to be resources. I think it's exciting. I can't even tell you all the fun things we're going to do. We're going to have classes on Thursday night about, what in the world does the Bible say about depression? Does the Bible say anything? And stuff people have said in the past, maybe that's a bunch of bunk. And just ask hard, deep, probing questions. and hopefully tell the truth. So anyway, we hope you've enjoyed it. And I don't know what you say to sign off. Come back soon. See you soon. Have a great day. Kick it up. Peace out.
Thank you.
Thank you.